Alright, in today's tutorial we are going to go over gradients, which is this tool right here. We're going to go over the text tool, and we're also going to go over how to use the layer style function as well. So let's go ahead and go to File, New, and let's go ahead and make 300 pixels or 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels, resolution 300. And color mode CMYK, and the background contents can be white. And let's just go ahead and put gradient. Yeah, you can just label this gradient and then your name. Okay. Okay, and we're also going to add a border too. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that we're going to add a border as well. So the first thing is first, what we're going to do, I want to go over the text tool. I want you to click right here, and you have a few options. We'll dive into this later. We'll try to get into this a little bit later. The horizontal and vertical type mask tool. We will be going over masking for sure, but for now, what I want to go over is the horizontal type tool and the vertical type tool. The horizontal type tool, when you click on it, it changes your formatting toolbar. You can see you have your fonts, and pretty standard. This is your color right here. There's your alignment. So I want you to change the font size to about 48, and I want you to just type in your first name. Okay? You click right there. You can click on the move tool. You can move it. When you click on the move tool and move your name, you can see that it automatically creates a layer for you, which is really nice, and it also labels it whatever you typed. So that's really handy in terms of staying in touch with our non-destructive editing style that we use. So once you have your first name, what I want you to do is go ahead and you can choose any font you like, right? If you want, I want you to go ahead and change the color. Just change it to whatever color you want. To highlight the text, you can just double click right here on your layer palette. If you double click on the T right here, it'll highlight it, and then you can change the color by clicking right up here and then changing it to a different color. Okay, and so we've created text. It created a layer automatically, and we changed the color of the text as well. Second, I want you to click back on your text tool and click the vertical type tool, and I want you to just type in your last name vertically, okay? And you can see that that's too big, so I'm going to double click on it right here, my layer palette, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Just make it so that it fits, okay? And we have our first name, we have our last name, and now what I want to do is I want to go over the warp tool. So let's go ahead and click back on your text tool right here, and click on your first name. And what I want you to do is I want you to click right here. This is the warp tool. If you click on it, you can click on it like so, and it says style. You can click none, and then it has a variety of different options you can choose from. And let me just go over, let's say, arc. If I click arc, you can see that it'll arc the text. It's arcing whatever layer I'm currently on in terms of the text tool. And you can use these sliders to manipulate it whichever way you see fit, okay? Which is kind of nice and gives you plenty of options in terms of manipulating the text. So go ahead and warp it to any style you'd like. Click OK. Okay, so that's the warp tool. If you want to warp your last name, you can click on your last name. Make sure you're on the text tool, and you can warp that as well. Maybe I'll do something that looks like that. Oop, no. Maybe fisheye. So, no, that's kind of hard to read. Let's do shell. Ooh, that's pretty dramatic. So I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that. Okay. And you can also change this to horizontal as well. If you want the effect to change horizontally, you can do that as well. Maybe I'll leave it like that. Now, so we've created two layers, or it created two layers for us. We've talked about the horizontal tool and the horizontal type tool and the vertical type tool. Now, what I want to go over is the layer style tool. Now, you don't want to have your layer selected like this. You just want to have your layer selected. And then if you go to layer style and go to blending options, this gives you a ton of options that you can apply to your text. So whatever layer you're on, it's going to affect. So I'm on the Todd layer. I can click on the drop shadow. If I click drop shadow, make sure it's blue too, so that you have the editing control open. And you can change the angle of the drop shadow. All right, you can change the color right here of the drop shadow if you wanted a different drop shadow color. A lot of different options. If you want to turn that off and you want to do like an outer glow, you can click right here and change the outer glow and change these elements right here. There's a stroke. If you want to add like a stroke, you can click right here. And right now you can see that I don't have any options here. You need to click right here where it says stroked so it turns blue, and then you have the option to change the stroke. You can change the color as well. There's a bevel if you want to bevel or emboss it. So take a few minutes and kind of play around with these different layer options, because between the layer style and the warp text, it gives you a lot of flexibility in making creative text. And I want you to apply a layer style to your first name and your last name. So I'm going to click right here. You can see that it adds it to the layer palette as well. You can always go back and edit this if you decide to change it at a later time by simply clicking on these. All right. But go ahead and apply a layer style to both your first name and your last name. So I'm going to click on the Teetsel, go back to layer style, and let's say I'm just going to add a drop shadow, or I'll do maybe a gradient overlay. Yeah, and then I could change it if I wanted to right here, but I will, no, actually I'll just leave that. Let's see, and yeah, I'm just gonna leave, actually no, I'll apply it just so that I have one applied on it. Gradient overlay, and let's say I'll do this gradient. Okay, now I've created a gradient. Now the next thing I want to show you guys is how to create gradients in general, and this is very similar to the gradients we used in Illustrator, so it should be very, very similar. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide these layers, the first and last name, and I'm going to click back on the background. And if I click on the gradient right here, it's embedded with a paint bucket. I can click right up here, and I'm going to kind of whiz past this since this is what we did in the Illustrator. If you want to create a custom gradient, you can click on one and move these sliders. If you want to change the color, you can click right here, click on it, and then double click and change the color. And then you can click OK. If you want to take one of these off, you can just hold down and drag it. If you want to add one, you can click on it and you can move it. You can also move these points as well. Gradients are a great way to fill up space with color. You can drag that out, go back to black. Let's say take this out and maybe add one by clicking, change the color. And so let's say this is my custom gradient. I could just click rename it and click new. There's my new gradient. And now what I want you to do is, after you create a custom gradient, I want you to play around with these 5 different types. If you hold and drag down, you can see that it fills up the space. If I draw a small line, it does that. If I do a big line, so it is dependent on the angle and the size of the line. Circle, right? There's this one, which is the angle gradient. The reflected one. Let's see, and the diamond one. So reflected and then diamond, right? Sorry about that. And then after you create a custom gradient and you apply one of these gradients onto your canvas, turn the eyes back on. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a border to this. Okay. Now, to create a border, I'm going to create a new layer because I want the border to be on a new layer just in case I want to remove it or alter it later. So I'm going to click down here, right down here, or you can go to Layer, New Layer, and I'm going to label this border and click OK. And after that, what I'm going to do is I'm making sure I'm on the border layer. I'm going to use my marquee tool and go to rectangle marquee, and I'm going to just click and drag down here. And right now I've created a square, right? But I want the border to be selected, not the inside. So right now if I filled this in with, let's say, the paint bucket, it would just fill in the inside. I want the outside, so I'm going to hold down Control, click, and actually I lied. Go back to your marquee tool. I want you to hold down Control, click, and I want you to go to Select Inverse. This way it'll select everything but the inside. Actually, that was feather. There we go. Select Inverse. There we go. Third time's a charm. So now when I chose Select Inverse, it selected everything except for the middle part that was originally selected. And now I can color this in and go to your paint bucket and color it in just a solid color. Doesn't matter what color, and click inside it. And now you've created a border. You can click Command D to take away the marching ants. So now you can see that we've created a gradient background. We've created a border that we can always alter or change or take off if need be. And we've created 2 text layers and changed it with the layer styles. And also the warp tool as well that's in your text palette. When you're done, go ahead and save this as a PSD file to preserve all the layers.